Welcome to Rise Up Love Ministries. I'm your host, Julius Hammond, here with my beautiful host.
GG.
Co-host. Host, co-host. We're going to continue our discussion from our last session. What was the topic again?
Dealing with self before dating.
Dealing with self before dating. So, honey, take it away.
So from last week, as a recap, we were talking about dealing with self before dating. And so we were focused on the verse James 1:23, which says, if anyone is a hearer of the word and not a doer, that he's like a man who looks intently at his face in the mirror and after looking at himself goes away and immediately forget what he looks like. But whoever intently looks into the perfect law that gives freedom and continues in it, not forgetting what they have heard, but doing it, they will be blessed in what they do. So the context that we were on was that you have to be able to reflect into yourself and identify the issues that you have instead of stuffing them down. Stuffing them down brings trauma and no healing. And reading your word and getting close to God will help you to become grounded and realize the places that you fall short and need to fix. We were talking about how you can't put old wine into new wineskins lest it burst, meaning that you can't take your old jacked up ways of thinking and doing things into new relationships and territory. That whenever God was getting ready to do something new with somebody, he always changed the person's location and their mindset. So we have to be willing to evolve and change the ways that we used to do things and the way we used to think. We need to go from glory to glory and advance and become better than us staying stagnant and thinking that the ways that we are is just perfectly fine. We were also talking about dating and being married requiring us to be on a whole different level of maturity and anointing. It's a walk of dying to self. That if you're getting into marriage thinking that somebody's going to cater to you always and that you don't have to do anything, that is like a princess on a pedestal or a king and his subjects kind of mentality in marriage or even in relationships, that is not going to prosper or thrive. So if you step into a relationship with a what can I get mentality, the relationship will always suffer because you're not going to be willing to give. And relationships are give and take situation. It's not a hungry hippos. You know, when you were younger, you had that game, Hungry Hippos, where you put all the balls in the middle and everybody was busy pressing the button trying to get the most balls. That's not how marriage works or relationships. You're not there trying to get the most balls. That didn't sound right.
Yeah, I was about to say, you said balls too many times. Like, no, man.
You're not there trying to get the most.
I played that game, but no balls. No.
I like that. You're not, the person trying to get the most out of, the bucket. You have to be willing to share in order you guys to grow collectively. And part of that is having a self-purging, which is essential to growth and transformation if it's going to take place. So that was a recap from last week. So moving into this week, most of us get into relationships believing that we are so-called a great catch. But in reality, we have so many issues and we come with so much baggage that we tend to destroy good relationships that could have become more by our insecurities and hang-ups that we fail to deal with. We allow these unhealed hurts to make us behave in ways that are detrimental to that in which we're trying to build. Last week, we talked about how I gave you the analogy of how you have a guy who's trying to love on his woman and go to lunch or dinner, and she's finding fault with everything that's going on around her because she has insecurities. And many times in our lives, we tend to do that. Or, I even found myself when I was reflecting upon, my youth and dating and things of that nature, that a lot of things that had happened to me prior that I did not deal with were like trigger points for the new relationships, and it caused a lot of friction because the person would be like, well, I don't even understand why you're getting so angry about X, Y, and Z. And many times we got to do that mental excavation and ask ourselves, why is it that this particular thing is getting this kind of rise out of me? Why am I so upset over something so minute? It could be something as simple as your husband didn't wash the dishes, or your spouse didn't pick up his clothes, and you just hit the roof and you're not talking to him for the rest of the day. And something as simple as clothes shouldn't have that kind of rise or that kind of effect on you.
It's a trigger mechanism. Yeah.
Right, but maybe it's a trigger because when you were younger, you never got to go to any parties or play outside because you were folding all the clothes for the whole household. Or maybe you were stuck always doing the dishes and you had to do them over and over and over again to the point where your hands were blistered or or you didn't get to finish the things that you wanted to do because you were busy catering to everybody else, and that became a trigger to you. And so it's kind of like we have to identify the meaning behind a lot of the things that we go through. And sometimes we not dealing with these situations can have bigger issues when it comes to the intimate side of relationships, because a lot of times with women, our sense of intimacy with our spouse or with our significant other and affection has a lot to do with our emotions and how we feel we're being treated. If we feel like we're being taken for granted, we may take it to the limit and be like, okay, I'm not cooking, I'm not cleaning, I'm not talking to you, I'm gonna talk to my friend instead. And then that separation begins to expand between the two people because of that situation going on.
Okay.
And so it's kind of like in the midst of us trying to build something, we also have to learn how to build ourselves and excavate and figure out what it is that is really our trigger point, what our boundaries are, what we want to happen in our relationship, what is intolerable. Because a lot of times we step into everything with a laissez-faire mentality in our relationships, and then when things go to pots, we're like, oh God, what's happening? Why is this happening to me? And we didn't set a firm foundation on what it is that we want to have transpire, not only in intimate relationships, but also with friendships. There's many boundaries and barriers that we haven't established with certain friends. Certain friends, they'll call you like 11, 12 o'clock at night. Hey, what's up, girl? Can you come pick me up? And you're married. And you're like, no, I can't pick you up. And your husband's like, I don't want you to leave. And you're like, yeah, but it's my friend. I got to go, because if I don't go, she's going to end up somewhere. And we take responsibility for people that aren't really our responsibility. And those responsibilities can cause issues.
Well, it's just setting a standard. I think that's the problem. I think in the problem in relationships, we don't set standards that we don't let other people cross those boundaries or those lines when we set them. In business, I've learned that I had to really set a standard for myself, and say, hey, okay, this is my standard. I'm coming home at 7 p.m. no matter what, or if I can't come home, I'm gonna call you to let you know, hey, honey, I have this project I'm working on. I'm gonna be here at the office for an extra hour. Okay. But most times I make it home by 7 o'clock, or, hey, don't call me. My business hours closes at 5 or whatever to receive calls. But then we start accepting calls at 8 o'clock because depending on who, what client or partner or whatever the case may be, when you set a standard and you stick with that standard, usually you'll thrive within that relationship or within, that business or whatever, part of your life that you set that standard for. It just is, for me, it's when it comes to relationships, I know something we had to learn was that during the time that when we were like having friends and family call and do all this other stuff, it wasn't until we got counseling, even going back to what you said in regards to, you being, what was the word that you used? What was the name of it? Anyway. So, I'm trying to remember. Like, guys, my head is all fogged up right now. I have some business stuff going on this week, so I'm kind of trying to get back into this mode. So I apologize. But anyway, going back to what I said, it's just setting a standard to making sure that when you set that standard, that no one's going to, cross over that line.
So what is your view in regards to what I said with past trauma affecting your relationships? Do you find that to be true in your situation, or nah, the past is the past and you're able to move forward and not think about, or I don't want to say punish, but kind of like throw the problems of a past relationship on a new partner? Like, what is your ideology in that? Like, what do you think?
Well, personally, I'm big on, I can compartmentalize, you know what I mean? I do that a lot because I'm the oldest and all my family members, cousins and everybody. So I was always like the leader, ordained it, and I didn't even know it, until I start getting older. Like my cousin David would we would be playing in the backyard and he would do something. And if he go tell, it's like, okay, Julius and Q, why are you guys, you guys are the oldest. Why aren't you guys need to set the standard? It's your responsibility. So, I had to learn when I was younger to, what being in a leadership position was. I'm more defined and refined now than I was back then, of course, because I'm a teenager or whatnot. But in regards to your question, it's just getting counseling. I think counseling really helps, understanding what those trigger points are and what's, what hurts you, what doesn't hurt you, and why is this hurting you? I didn't really understand it until I got counseling, to be honest. What I was doing, because it's you do things knowingly and unknowingly, you know what I mean? And
Right.
when you're doing something repetitively, you're like, you're unknowing. You're like, oh, I didn't know that. I mean, I'm used to doing that. Like you didn't say anything about it. You know what I mean? And then when you say something about it, you blow up about it. You know what I mean? Because you've held it in for this many months, years, weeks, whatever the case may be, right? And so when it comes out in a very landish, outburst. It's like, oh, you really effed up, and it's like, huh? Like, why you didn't say anything when it had happened? Because maybe you were afraid, you didn't know what my reaction was going to be, or whatever the case may be. But yeah, that's just going off me personally. I didn't know what I was doing back then. Now I'm more aware of what I'm doing, and I try not to do those things in order to, not make you upset in those areas.
Make me upset. It's all good. Well, another part of that is that, many times when we have relationship issues, or, we've been through a lot, especially in the dating scene, because today's dating scene and what it was 5-10 years ago is totally different. There's so many different situations that you have to consider now that weren't present beforehand. So, another issue that plays a large part in the way that we behave, as well as the way that the trajectory of our relationships and our lives take, is dealing with unresolved past sexual sins and traumas that can ruin your future. Sometimes when we've been through a lot, we tend to use our pain to navigate through life, and we don't want the same thing to happen again. So we put up these boundaries and rules that may stem from an unhealthy place rather than God's word. Mm-hmm. So sometimes we can do it because we're in our feelings or our flesh. Galatians 5:19-21 says that the acts of the flesh are obvious: sexual immorality, impurity, debauchery, idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, discord, jealousy, fits of rage, selfish ambition, dissensions, factions, envy, drunkenness, and orgies, and the like. And so it goes into this long list of everything.
That's why I love the Bible, man. The Bible goes deep.
It does.
It does.
It does. But the interesting part about it is that when we look at the relationships in today and what social media is projecting, and even television, you have like so many TV shows like Power and Real Housewives of Atlanta and all this other stuff, that the whole relationship's just filled with drama. Johnny cheated on Sally. Sally's sister's pregnant with Johnny's baby. Johnny likes Sally's mother and is leaving Sally for the mother. It's like, what's really going on here? And then it's just envy, strife, jealousy, hatred, fighting in the streets, and it's kind of like all these things are like shown as like part of the relationship love factorization. Mm-hmm. And it's not. And so at the end of the day, they have all this stuff going on, because I know people like drama and they like to see something happen.
Well, they like to be entertained. Let's call it what it is. Like a lot of those shows, like Real Housewives of Atlanta or Love and Hip Hop. I mean, a lot of that stuff is scripted too. A lot of people don't even understand that. Like, I'm not saying that stuff doesn't really happen. It does. But when you look at a scripted show or a movie or a TV series, they have scripts that they follow. And so their job is to cast out that situation. The husband comes home and the wife is in bed with the best friend. And that their job is to entertain and to sell that situation as much as possible to get ratings. That's their job. And so when people start really understanding that, stop watching it.
I understand
At
that,
the
but
end
the
of the day.
thing is, us as adults, we can go ahead and have that mindset that, okay, this is not healthy to my soul. But my thing is for the younger generations who hasn't dated, who haven't been out there, and they're watching this, like, okay, this is how older people behave. Women are just supposed to use men for their money. If I wear this skirt and I put this lipstick on and I shift my hips like this is the type of man I'm going to get. When you have that kind of trajectory being put out there, and you have even as parents, you can only do so much to monitor and put child protective whatever on the TV and the phones and whatever, but kids nowadays,
Nobody pays attention to that.
I know kids nowadays, they're very, very
PG-13 and you got a 9-year-old watching it. Man, get out of here. Ain't nobody. They put that little sign on the bottom right, PG-13 or rated R or whatever. Man, nobody cares about that. They don't look at that stuff.
Well, honestly, the PG-13 doesn't even matter. Like,
No.
when I was growing up, I was like, oh my gosh, PG-13 meant like it was almost low-key porn. Nowadays, it's kind of like PG-13 is kind of like a snippet for an ad. It's not even taken seriously. So it's kind of like when you have the kids watching these shows and the women and the men portraying their behavioral systems like that. You have them thinking that this is the way to behave. Okay, if he beats me and brings me flowers and he makes me make love to me later on tonight, we're good because he really loves me. He was only angry because he loved me. And it's kind of like you perpetuate this system of abuse on both spectrums. Okay, well, if she burns my clothes and shows up at my job and get me fired, she really loves me. That is not love. And the Bible makes it clear in Galatians 5:19 through 21. And so it's kind of like when we don't deal with our own issues and our trauma, it can cause us to use and abuse and mistreat other people too, as well as create unhealthy expectations that stem from past places of pain. So in Galatians, it was talking about all these things that are works of the flesh. But I'm going to focus on, I think, 3. So I'm going to focus on sexual immorality. I'm going to focus on witchcraft and hatred.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's interesting because in many relationships, people get into relationships because they want to be with somebody who makes them better, who has their head on straight, somebody who has focus and goals and is driven. But many times when we want those things, in many cases, we ourselves at that point in time are not those things. It's kind of like we're looking for it in somebody else to kind of like, I don't know how to explain it. It's kind of like get the cow for free to a certain degree. Like almost like it was interesting. I was going through Facebook and like on a lot of the feeds, like there was a lot of men talking about, if you want your woman to act right, treat her right and whatever. But then there was also men on there that was talking about how they feel like it's the scale of people's worth is unbalanced when it comes to men and women.
It is.
And so it's kind of like men, it's like, okay, you have to be you have to be a provider, you have to be a protector, you have to be a lover, you have to love God, you have to be able to handle your own and handle outside family, and all this other stuff in order for you to find a woman and be a good man or considered a good man. But then for a woman, it's kind of like all you got to do is cook dinner. It's like what happened to the rest? It's kind of like you want me to be like almost on billionaire status in order to take care of you, but you can barely wash dishes, And so it's kind of interesting when he was talking about it, because I think we as women many times, not all, because some of them were really raised right by their mothers. They can do all of the above by themselves, and they are actually an asset to the relationship. But then other ones are kind of like, how you always explain the difference between assets and liabilities. They're more of a liability. They're a pretty liability because it's kind of like, okay, they have a nice waist and a nice figure and they're beautiful, but they can't cook, they can't clean, they can't help you with anything. And it's kind of like I don't want to say they don't have no value, but the value of the relationship moving forward with them in it is not there. And so it's interesting because when you look at it from that trajectory, it's kind of like, what am I really getting here? Am I just getting somebody to sleep with and that's it? Because nowadays you could find sex anywhere. You know what I mean? What else do we have to offer? And so as a woman, it really made me think, like, what is it? What would I want? You know what I mean? And for women out there, it's kind of like so many of them are wondering, why is it that, he hasn't put a ring on it? Why is it that he hasn't invited me to his house to meet his mom and his daddy? It's like, you don't have the qualities that are necessary to take that next leap into the next level of where God will try and take you in a relationships, because you haven't even mastered the singleness.
You're not a wife yet.
Nah, you're not.
No.
I mean, honestly, like, think about it. If we met And the first time we met, you came to my apartment, so we could watch movies and kick it. And I said that I was going to cook or order DoorDash or whatever. And you walked in and my whole place smelled like old dish rags. And then there was underwear and clothes lined up across the dang, living room. And I'm like, I'm sorry about that. I'm picking it up, throwing it over the couch. Go ahead, have a seat. It's okay. I'm going to get to that later. And you're like, okay. And then so you're sitting there and then you glance into the kitchen and you see the eggs from 2 days ago, congealed on a plate somewhere in the corner, and you're like, okay. And then you look in the sink and the dishes are full and you're like, dang. And she's like, I was going to get to that, I've just been busy. And you're like, all right, can I use your bathroom? Then you go to the bathroom and then you walk into the bathroom and it smells like dead salmon. It just smells like fish. You got underwear all over the floor. You got a brown ring around the shower, hair in the sink, makeup everywhere.
Damn, projects for real, huh?
I'm just saying.
Yeah,
use tissue. And then she's like, I don't understand why you won't marry me. I don't know why you ain't trying to take this to the next level. And you're like, next level? We need Mary maids in here. Because in your head, like what would be your thoughts?
Well, first of all, there's an old saying, cleanliness is next to godliness. And so we have all these gods and goddesses walking around here to proclaim gods and goddesses, but then you dirty. It's like, really? You know what I mean? And first of all, there would be no Rise Up Love Ministries because we would not be here. Number one. Number two,
I need to rise up and clean that house.
Yeah, you need to rise up. Rise up, clean the house ministries. That's what that would be called. This. But yeah, there would be no second date. You know what I mean? Our kids would never. No, because I'm not one of those type of guys that back then, when I was younger, I used to just go for looks, and that's the first thing as men that catches us. But to retain us, you got to have a brain. You got to have something going for yourself. Okay, getting us in the beginning. That's why I urge people. This name is not gonna sound right to a lot of people, but I want people to really, really listen to Kevin Samuels.
Not
okay,
him.
no, hold on. Listen to me. Listen to me. Okay, don't just listen to the women part, because before that, he was getting on the men. Listen how he gets on the men. He got on the men way harder than he did the women. Way harder. It's just that with the women, with in particular with our community, with the African American community or whatever, just black people, the women aren't used to. They're used to, because we got to remember the way the world is, or the way the world has been. Disney has painted this fairy tale. You got Snow White and the was it the 12 7 doors? Well, was it 12? I can't remember.
I don't know. A lot of them.
Yeah, people. Whatever, right? Or you got Bambi, and you got. I mean, they always painted this beautiful picture, or Little Mermaid, where she goes from a mermaid to a beautiful lady, and you got Prince Charming who will come and sweep her away. It don't happen like that. That's not reality. That's a fantasy. You know what I'm saying? And so reality is, you got more ugly ducklings than you got princes, but guess or kings. But at the end of the day, as long as that guy who's average is willing to treat you and like an above average individual that you are and value you, then that should be okay. But most women don't want that.
I don't know, because in today's society, it seems like the really good guy always finishes last to a certain degree.
Well, but whose fault is that though?
No, I'm not. I don't know whose fault it is. I'm just saying in general.
No,
I'm being serious.
I know, but let's keep it a buck. Whose fault is that? Why do good guys finish last?
I think because in a lot of ways, because they're kind, they're taken advantage of.
By who?
It depends. By women. No, wait. By women and also by society.
Thank you. By women. Let's keep it a buck.
No,
that's
by
what it
women
is.
And
that's what it is.
Sometimes if you are that type of person,
y'all want the bad boys. Y'all want the assholes. Y'all want the ones to run over you a little bit. Because I'm not saying he has to be super duper outrageously disrespectful, but at the end of the day, y'all like if you guys are talking too much for a dude to be like, "Hey man, shut up. You're talking too much." That I don't know what it does.
I don't
know what it does. It's like y'all get to. Ooh, he just told me to shut up. Like I want him now. You know what I mean? Like that's how that. I don't understand it, but it does something to your brain and the what do you call it? The what do you call that?
Pheromones.
Pheromones. Thank you. The pheromones that's in your body is it gets you all riled up. I don't know what it does to y'all. I can't.
I get riled up, but not in a good way. You don't want to see Sheba come out. It's a whole nother. It's like skeletons out the closet. You ain't gonna talk to me crazy. That's that doesn't give me that kind of rise. But I understand what you're
Sheba's
saying.
a whole different personality. Just think of Sheba like Beyonce and Sasha Fierce. That's kind of like how Sheba is. So.
Yeah, to being talked to crazy doesn't make me excited. You know what I mean? I mean, there is something about a man being assertive and speaking up for himself, like, hey, you know what? I don't appreciate what you're saying. I suggest you stop before this goes south. Okay, it's like, okay, well, I'm sorry. And you take into consideration what he's saying. But all that, girl, you better shut the and all that extra, nah, that's not in any way godly. It's not manly. It's not.
Well, the hood rats like that. They like a guy to talk to him that way. They be like, oh, girl, he just told me to shut the HE double hockey sticks up.
Yeah,
like,
but at the same time, you got to...
He getting it tonight. Like, huh? What kind of... whatever,
But at the same time, you got to also understand the kind of environment that they're coming from. I think that what we're able to digest is okay also comes from what we see from our parents as well as the environments that we come from and what we watch that kind of like structurize our understanding of what reality is. Yeah. And so, back to what I was talking about, the girl with the dirty house. Yeah. And so it's kind of like when you come from a place where, you have that kind of mentality to where you don't even value the things that you have and you're looking for somebody to provide for you on a husband status. He's like, you don't even take care of your stuff. Mm-hmm. You got everything looking like this. If I happen to give you my kids, this is what I'm going to be coming home to, times 2. Yeah. And so it's kind of like, okay, you look flawless when we leave your house, but when I get into your house, this is what I'm looking at. So it's kind of like, you got to get yourself together. And that's one thing that my mama always taught me. It was like drilled into me since I was little. My mama had me washing dishes when I was like 5. Mm-hmm. Even my grandma, she was like, a woman is useless if they're not useful within their own home. It's one thing to just look a certain way, but if you don't have qualities that will keep the man coming back, then that's when it becomes a whole nother issue. And that also touches on another thing biblically, because many times when we read the story of Esther, yeah, and her husband, and how all that came to play. The Bible talks about how the king was actually married to somebody else named Vashti. Mm-hmm. And he threw a big party and a big celebration. He was well known and everything. And his wife was like a bad one. She was so pretty, so beautiful and everything. And he was, when in biblical times when they threw parties, they didn't do it like how we do everybody together. Mm-hmm. They had kind of like the men's portion and then the women's would throw their own party somewhere else, so nobody would get offended. Because a lot of times when these men threw the parties and they had these women and all these people with the dancing and all that other stuff and they're getting drunk, they don't want nobody's wives going home not talking to them because of stuff that happened at the party. So they would kind of like separate just so you
or if you talk to another man's wife, like there is no like I'm gonna get him later on. Like they would go get the knife from the back and come stab you.
Yeah, because back then the wine was kind of strong. You don't want to be over there in the corner with I don't know, the Prince of Assyria's wife, and you trying to get some, and the next thing you know, 3 months later she pregnant and there's a war because it's your baby kind of stuff. So it's kind of like they kind of like separated the parties in order to make sure that
kept the peace.
To a certain degree, that if anything did occur, at least they know that it's nobody else's spouse kind of stuff. And so when he threw this party, and he was there, mingling with all his friends and, telling them how great he was and, trying to, puff up his pride a little bit, trying to flex. He was like, you know what, I'm going to show you my wife. I'm going to bring my wife so you guys can meet my wife. Mm-hmm. And, he sent the servant to go and get the wife. And the servant came back and she said, she ain't coming. And back then, I don't want to say it's kind of Muslim-like, but you don't say no to your husband. It's like that's ultimate disrespect. Mm-hmm. And he was like, what? And then, everybody else who sees him in high regard is all like, dang, your wife don't even listen to you? She said she ain't coming. That's crazy.
No, it's like that in this is the westernized society we live in. It's like that in other countries still.
Right.
They still have that. Like, no. You don't disrespect your husband or your whatever, even if it's a concubine. You listen, that man is taking care of everything. You have nothing to worry about. No bill, no nothing. You get to do what you want. But whatever he want, you need to do that.
So, when, his servant came, he was like, man, dog, this look bad. She over here, she disrespecting you. She talking about she ain't coming. She got a whole party going on that you cater to for her and her friends, but she talking about she not coming.
Yeah.
And so her and her behavioral system and what she thought, she was worth, or what the situation was worth, and her not coming cost her her whole crown.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you also got to dig deep in that, like the reasoning behind her not wanting to come. It kind of like gives an underlying factor to their own relationship, because in a lot of ways, if a woman was well kept and she thought that she was being treated right, unless she had other identity issues to where she's like super conceited and she's thought herself higher than her husband to where she didn't have to come, you have to ask yourself the reason. Why was it that she felt it okay to be like, I'm not coming, he could do him, I'm gonna do me and my friends in the middle of a big party, of a social gathering? So it goes back to her and her own issues. Like, okay, what was it in her life, or what has she been through that would cause her to react in such a way that would cost her the crown?
Mm-hmm.
And so when the king, woke up and done cast her out and everything because he was mad because she made him look kind of stupid, and he was like, okay, well, where's my wife? They're like, you ain't got a wife. And he couldn't take her back because it would have been like a sign of weakness. Mm-hmm. So he had to look for a new one. But the thing is, even with him looking for the new one, there was a certain criteria that he wanted her to fit. So the same situation with Vashti wouldn't happen again.
Mm-hmm.
So there had to be a higher level
standard, like I said.
A higher standard and a higher level of understanding with the woman that he picked in order to be the mother of his children and the person that he put on his arm. Mm-hmm. And the same thing is true with us. It's kind of like we go through traumas, and because we've gone through these traumas, if we don't allow them to heal and take a proper understanding of it from a biblical perspective, we punish people for things that they have nothing to do with. Like in a lot of relationships and a lot of marriages, you have situations where, I would say that in marriage, there's two of the biggest issues that people have in marriage is money and sex. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of it, money stems from, stuff that people have done in the past, or things that they did or didn't have, and a certain standard that they're looking for. Mm-hmm. So like if I came to you and I'm used to being in relationships where the guy has like 5 Maseratis and I'm always going on shopping sprees, and I never have to pay for anything. If I wanted to go to Hawaii today, I just book a ticket, I'm gone tomorrow kind of thing. And I meet you and you're just like the normal average, got my little job, everything of mine is paid, but I can't really afford the super extravagance. It's kind of like, it might be something as simple as you want to do something for my birthday and you do a candlelight dinner with, I don't know, something that you order from DoorDash because you don't really cook, and then you decorate the place and you're like, happy birthday, honey. And I'm like, thank you. And you're like, well, what's wrong? Nothing. I was just expecting you to take me to Paris on a $7,000 shopping spree, but this is all right, I guess. And you're like, that's my rent for the next 7 months. I don't know.
Yeah, see,
I don't know what you're talking about. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. And see, and all that is good and dandy, if that's what you're used to. And then again, this goes back to my Kevin Samuel example. Mm-hmm. If you're going to have a high value man, okay, I'm just keeping it 100 with you. If you're going to have a high value man, okay, and you got everything, this whole thing is a sport, that like the game of life that we're in a sport. So as a black male, I'm considered by society standards, this is like unofficial, but you could just tell by the way, communities and certain things are treated, how certain things are happening, right? It's like, you got to be Stevie Wonder not to see this at this point in time, what's going on in today's society. But I'm considered like the bottom of the barrel, totem pole. So I have to work my way up to get to where I'm at right now, and then have to maintain that status, because everybody's always coming for your spot. Do you understand what I'm telling you?
No.
Okay. I have to work my way up to get to, a certain status wise, money, respect above my peers. You know what I mean? To get, like, say if I'm used to make 45, 50,000 a year. Not too bad. That's average. Okay. But then I exceed that and I'm making 3 million a year. Now that's great. I'm there, but people, I still have haters and people and detractors and people who want to see me lose, or they want to try to come for my spot by trying to, sully in your name, trying to, talk about your character and things like that to try to get you to crash down. You know what I mean? So when you get there, and so what I'm saying is, as in a relationship, when you're dealing with a high value person, they have options. Okay, meaning that they can exercise that, because every woman wants, not every woman, but majority of women, especially in today's society, they want that type of man. At least that's all that's being perpetuated out there in the media. Like, okay, I want high value. I want this. I want this person who's making 6 figures plus, 100,000 plus. Okay, but that's not the norm. You can't look at rappers, entertainers, athletes. That's not normal. There's not a lot of 6'8", 240, 50 pound locomotive train coming down the court in LeBron James's. He's a superhuman. Like, God made him specially designed. Like, you can't. There's not a lot of LeBron Jameses coming being born left and right. You know what I mean?
So this is my question, because I'm trying to understand the narrative here. So when you said coming from your spot, are you speaking from men upon men and then
Yes.
trying to get you on a business level? Because my thing is that if you have a wife or a woman, their reason for being with you should not first and foremost be your pocketbooks.
Yeah. No. Okay. Let me. Okay. Maybe I didn't clear myself. In a relationship,
Okay.
if you date a high value man,
Right.
or if you're married to one,
Right.
or you have to understand his motives and what he got going on. Just because he has the options, because the more money he makes and the higher status and economic status he goes, the more the opposite gender is going to want him.
But that's irrelevant to the point of you being with them in the first place. Okay. Like, for me, the way that I look at it is that
I'm only going off what you said about, the whole women wanting this. Well, that's why they want that. A lot of women want that, because if you have a girl who was born in poverty in the projects, and she meets a guy and he's flying her out and he's doing all this stuff and taking her places and all this stuff, right? And then for whatever reason they don't work out. Then she gets another guy. I'm going off your example. She gets another guy who's average, who maybe has his house paid but he's working and things like that. He's not flying trips to Paris just on a whim. You know what I'm saying? But she's used to that other guy. Well, first of all, she picked him. She picked the second guy. So obviously most guys are not going to, like, hey, this is what I got. I'm not flying private jets. I'm not, going to lavish trips every month or whatever that you're used to. This is what I can do for you. Maybe 2 trips a year, put a budget to the side or whatever, and now we can go. But if you're used to that, just understand that when you get used to that other things come with that. Other women, other potential problems come with that, because that man is a 1%er. He's not the norm. So a lot of women want that lifestyle. A lot of women want to be able to fly, go travel, be able to, live in nice houses and drive nice cars and things like that. It's just the way it's wired. You know what I mean?
I get what you're saying, but I think in a lot of ways, like, for women, it's not even so much about him being able to take her places. and have stuff. Like the two examples that I gave with the guy who has extreme wealth and the one who's just average. In both trajectories, you're talking about, high value and then people trying to take you for what you're worth or take your bag or whatever. That's common on both levels. Even with the man who's average, you still have the homies who would still try to get your girl. In the higher level,
that's on any level.
Right,
Yeah,
that's on any level. And on both levels, for the women, the main factor on whoever it is that they choose is the issue of safety. Safety and security is big for a woman. And so it's kind of like the more money he has, the more resources he has, the more safe she feels.
Yeah.
The more safe she feels to have his children, the more safe she feels to be his wife. Because at the end of the day, God forbid, if something happens, he gets in a airplane crash or whatever.
Yeah.
And she's pregnant with his kids, or they have 2 kids together. If he dies, she'll mourn, but she's not going to be destitute and working at McDonald's.
Right.
Because
I understand what you're saying.
There will be things in place that
safety and security.
Right.
Yeah,
because
course.
there'll be things in place because of the work that he's put in to make sure that, okay, he's gone, but at least we have a trust fund for our kid. At least we have this going or that going.
Yeah.
The guy who's average is kind of like, for the most part, most men, they don't have 10 to 15,000 extra dollars sitting in the bank account, or even 20, or even 5. They're going from paycheck to paycheck. They're living on a budget based on what they have. So if she gets pregnant, it's a problem, because it's like, dang, okay, now we got 2 mouths to feed. I got to get an extra job, and he's stressed out. Then the relationship and the dynamic changes, because now he has more pressure to produce because of the more people that he produced. And he might not be ready for that right now. He might not be in that trajectory. He might be in school. You know what I mean? It's like, dang, okay, you're pregnant with triplets. I'm in school. I got this job. I ain't got no time. You can't work. Your family's already down my back. I don't know how I'm going to navigate through this. And then so stuff starts changing.
Yeah.
And so in the midst of that, he's trying to change his mindset to fit the narrative of what's happening in his life. And her, he was like, okay, well, 3 kids are coming. I think we should dim down on the sex. I think I need to focus more. I'm going to work more, X, Y, Z. And she's like, oh, well, he don't really want to take care of me. We got these 3 kids and he's not sleeping with me anymore. It must be somebody else. And so it's kind of like,
yeah, that would be a problem if he communicated that in the beginning. But if he didn't communicate that, and then she has to try to figure it out, then that's the communication issue.
Most men, and maybe now you're the unicorn, but what man is just gonna come and be like, baby, I wasn't really planning to have this kid, so I just think that we gonna just hold off on sex for a while. I'm just gonna do my own thing.
Well, more men are doing that now because less marriages are happening. You know what I mean? So more men are kind of like speaking their mind now with a lot of podcasts like Fresh and Fit and Kevin Samuels and things like that, where it's giving the men an actual voice to be able to, convey that to the woman. Because most men, when they tell it, most men, the reason why they don't say anything is because the average man, it's hard for them to get some poom poom. The average is. Okay. How can I put this? You can go, okay, most women, whether she's butt ugly or she fine as a glass of wine, she can go on Instagram. She can go on TikTok, anywhere where you can put a DM in, and she can have a flood of messages with guys trying to sleep with her. There's an unlimited how much, like, she can go outside and every night she can get pipe laid to her every night, left to right. That can't happen with men unless he looks good. If he has these 4 things, I call it the 6-6-6-6. He's 6 feet plus. He has 6 inches plus. You guys use imagination. What I'm saying, 6 inches. He's 6 feet. He's 6 figures. Okay. Really 3. What I said 4. 6 inches, 6 feet, and 6 figures. If he has those 3, then he can get any woman pretty much he wants.
That's not true, because you got people who in the hood that are piping down people on a daily, and they don't even got $5 in their pocket.
But okay, again, but he has 2 of the 6s. He might not have 6. He might not be 6 figures, but he might be 6 foot tall and he might look good.
I disagree.
There's a lot of broke guys who are short, but
ain't got no money.
Okay, but I understand that, but they have personality, and then they might be like cute or whatever
But
y'all
that's
call
not part
them.
of the six.
Okay, I'm just telling. Okay, well, you giving me scenarios. I'm trying to give you like to combat what you're saying. I'm trying to tell you like, okay, there are outliers. Like if the guy's short, he ain't got no money, all that stuff. But guess what? He probably got game. He know how to talk to women, and he knows how, to pretty much like
he's a manipulation artist.
He knows how to get the panties off. Like, doesn't call it what it is. He knows what he's doing.
That's gross.
Okay, yeah, but if you have if you're 6 feet tall, 6 inches plus, and you got six figures plus in your bank account, oh, you're pretty much a 1%er. You can pretty much get anyone you want. That's pretty much what it boils down to.
I don't know. I have to ponder on that. I don't know if I.
It's hard for you or most women to really understand that, because sex comes so easy for you guys. Like, you guys can get it every day. Like, if me and you got a divorce tomorrow, you can get pipe laid to you the next day. Because men, we can go and smash 1,000 women and not care about nobody. Like, you can have 1,000 men come and smash you and not one of them care. You know what I'm saying? About you. But for men, we have to become valuable. See, you guys, women are born with value. All you have to do is preserve it. Meaning that if you ain't been touched, if your womb ain't been tapped with, meaning that you don't have kids or anything like that, you don't have to. I mean, you're considered a diamond in the rough. Like, talk to we can do a survey on it or whatever, but talk to any men and ask them, would they rather have? Now, you get some that might say, okay, I'd rather have a whatever, but would you rather have someone who's never been touched, have no kids, who you can mold and things, compared to someone who's been tapped 10 times, got 2 kids, things like, they're going to tell you, oh man, give me the one who's never been touched.
I think that comes from a place of ignorance, though. Because
okay, I'm just telling you what it is.
I get what you're saying, and if that's the narrative, then so be it on y'all's end. But for me, my thing is that just because it's almost like saying, would you rather have a vine full of wild grapes or one that's been pruned? And anybody who's a farmer would say they would always want the pruned ones, because it's being cultivated into something greater. All the past, all the things that could hinder it from becoming its greatest version ever is being cut off, versus somebody who's ignorant and the only thing that they have is their virginity. Because the virginity is fine, but back to the narrative.
No, I didn't say ignorant. I mean, she got to be smart. She got to have something going for her, but not someone who's been ran through and have like 10 guys and have 2 kids after having 10 guys.
No, I'm not saying.
I'm not talking about that.
I'm not saying like that. Like, okay, because the way that it's being portrayed is like, okay, as long as she could be dumb as rocks, but as long as she has her virginity, all is good. And if the woman who has 2-3 kids, because she's been to 2 or 3.
And you know what's crazy that you say that though, because in most cases, the woman can be dumb. Because at the end of the day, if all the guy's trying to do is have sex with her, we don't care about her brain. We care about getting brain from her, but we don't care about her educational level. But if that's what all we're trying to do. But if we're trying to make someone our wife, that's the difference. Jump off, wife.
Right.
That's different. If we're trying to make somebody our wife, then we want somebody with some kind of smarts about her and got the other things that I said. That's kind of like a diamond right there compared to being
but then
a bunch of moldy old rocks that's been beat up, smashed, thrown against the wall, all kinds of stuff. Like, so I'm just giving you, it's not going to make sense from a woman's perspective in most cases, because you're seeing it from your lens. But if you look at the general, not the outliers, not, certain things, well, this couple, that's an outlier. We're talking about general.
No, I'm not seeing it from my lens, like if I just have my own theories and hypotheses. I'm looking at it from 2 trajectories, from my own experiences and from God's experiences. Yeah,
that's the true experience. That's what we were supposed to look at it from, is God's experience.
Right.
But, of course, the world don't preach that.
So it's interesting because, as much as you want to say the narrative of I want a virgin who ain't never been nowhere, smashed rocks against the wall, whatever, the woman who might have 2 baby daddies and 2 kids is a better fit for a wife than somebody who isn't in this aspect.
You're gonna have to break that down
No,
because that's
listen,
you're gonna have to break that down because yeah.
Because
I want to hear this.
Okay, because most of the time, for most women, because virginity is a rarity after the age of 20. Okay, for a woman who's over the age of 20. Or even under 25, let's just put it at 25. For a woman who's 25 and still has her virginity intact, most things are going on in her life that keeps it as such. One, she's probably still living in her parents' house, which means that her parents are still dictating her comings, her goings, and her finances. And her finances, she has really no trajectory on how to manage stuff because she's still daddy's girl, and she's still
good for the parents that are doing that. Just saying,
she's still at home. For women, if you're a daddy's girl and your dad is pretty well off, and you're 25 or below, you're probably living at home. He's probably still paying your cell phone bill. He got you your car, which means that you had no struggle in order to get those amenities. You're still living in their house, which means that you have no real understanding of bills and how to manage and budget and finance. And you pretty much have free time to mingle with the single friends and live that life of, okay, I want to travel and I want to whatever. So if you're coming as a high value man who has a business, who needs a co-partner to help him run stuff, who needs somebody who's able to cook meals and multitask and use common sense and decision making skills, that person, getting her and bringing her and her mindset into your world and trying to collaborate that, yeah, the sex might be great because she ain't never been with nobody and she thinks that you're the bomb. But then at the same time, every other thing that you need, you guys are going to be at friction with. Oh, well, she doesn't cook, she doesn't clean. Well, I never had to. You knew that before you got me, and I don't understand. And then all of a sudden, you're neglecting her. And you're like, I don't want to have sex with her. If she doesn't do X, Y, Z, I'm ready to leave. You're ready to cheat. Other people are becoming more attractive because of the fact that the things that you need, she's never been exposed to. On the other hand, if you have the woman who you say has been thrown against the wall or whatever, right? And has been used by different men. Let's say she's 26 and she has 2 kids. She's in an apartment by her own, right? And she's handling her stuff. It's not that she's here asking you to buy her kids Pampers and stuff. I'm not talking about the ones that are sitting there on, government assistance and they just want to stay there and they're looking for you to pay their nails and whatever, and they're trying to just sex you down to put a ring on their finger. I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about the single mothers who are now, she's 26. She got the two babies' fathers who didn't step up or whatever, or maybe they're stepping up to a certain degree, but she has to manage taking both kids to school. She has to manage cooking, cleaning, laundry, budgeting. She has to manage car payments, fixing whatever is wrong in the house, making sure that the kids have spiritual value, making sure she values herself, making sure that she's right with God, making sure that the kids' mindset are okay, that she encourages them and she navigates through whatever ups and downs that she's going through. I would think as a man, I would be like, okay, well, maybe 2 men didn't see her value, but I see her value because she's able to navigate all this stuff as a boss all by herself. So when she comes together with me, we gonna be a power couple because I don't have to tell her what to do.
I'm gonna break it down in a minute as soon as you finish.
I don't have to tell her what to do because she already doing it. So it's kind of like if your value for her comes from the fact that she's had 2 other people between her legs at some point in time when she thought that they were worth it, negates all the other qualities, then that's the reason why so many men pick the wrong people and end up on child support, because you're not looking at what actually matters. What matters is that whatever the mistakes or hardships or the ups and downs that she went through, she navigated through it. And now she has her mind right and she knows what to expect and what not to expect and how to behave in order to collaborate with somebody and build something greater. She's a builder. She's exactly what the Bible calls a helpmate, because she's able to see those things ahead of time and be like, baby, when I was trying to do my taxes, I went here and they can do this for your business and X, Y, Z, versus the one whose daddy's still paying everything. Honey, we're having financial troubles. Taxes, what's that? Bruh.
Okay. All right. All right, so I'm gonna break this down.
Okay,
I'm gonna go deep with this now. Okay, everything you said, you're right. Okay, let's start with the first lady, the one who's a virgin.
Right.
Okay. Now back then, and I'm not
talking about back then.
Okay, hold on. I know. I'm gonna come
right now.
I'm going to come up to modern times.
Okay,
but
go ahead.
Back then, when they did arranged marriages, I know they still do them to a degree. It depends on the country or whatever. But back then, when they did arranged marriages, was the woman a virgin or was she tapped?
The woman was a virgin.
Okay, that's number one. There's a reason for that. Okay, if you when you get the first woman, if she's a virgin and she hasn't been tapped in that way, and you're a high value. Now we're talking about high value man, someone who's 6 feet 6 inches and got six figures, right? We're talking about someone whose status is up here.
You can't mix the two.
Huh?
You can't mix the two.
What do you mean?
Back then, they weren't looking for 6.
No. I'm coming back to modern times now. So I'm talking about the high value. That's what I'm talking about. Okay, so again, I told you, for a woman, her thing is to preserve her value.
Because she was considered cattle.
Okay, you gonna let me break it down. So
okay,
now I only gave that particular one because of the virgin part. Now, say we come across a virgin. It's not too common nowadays, but you come across a virgin, right? She hasn't been tapped with or anything, but guess what? She's dealing with a high value man, someone who has 6 figures and all this other, the 666 stuff, right? He goes and he's training her, he's molding her the way he wants her to be. Now she ain't been tapped, which is great, because now he don't have to worry about. He knows that if he puts a baby in her, that's his baby, because she don't get around like that. That's number one. Number two, when it comes to the virgin, he can train her and mold her. Now, going to the other lady, she has value because she's an organizer. You're right. She might know how to do the taxes, know how to do all that stuff. But here's the glaring difference. Those 2 kids. Okay? Say I'm not high value man and I came across a woman who has 2 kids. Not my kids. That means they are liabilities to me.
What?
Yes. I'm telling you what, they are liability. This is why.
I'm listening to this. Go ahead.
This is why. This is the liability. Say I'll give you 2 scenarios. The dad is not in their life.
Right.
And I'm playing dad.
Right.
Okay. Now, I'm taking care of you and the kids. If I signed up for it, that's fine. But the problem is, say one of the kids is a girl and she's 16 now. Okay. And I've been taking care of this girl ever since she was 5. Whatever, right? So for the last 11 years, I've been in her life. For whatever reason, she pissed off at me.
Right. She
goes and tells you, Mom, so-and-so looked at me coming out the shower. Are you going to, now, I'm giving you another scenario. This is just this. What are you going to do if that happens? I've been in her life for 11 years. She just says, Mom, Julius looked at me while I was in the shower.
Well, I should know my spouse well enough to know that he's not a pedophile.
Okay, see, you know that. Now, we know that because we're different. We're logical thinkers. Most women will automatically believe the child. And I'm not saying not to believe the child. I'm not saying you don't, but investigate.
What does this have to do with the high value?
Okay, but because hold on. I'm getting there. Now, another scenario. 2 children, but then I have a baby by her.
Okay.
Okay, so now one of the children is mine. Okay. Now, same scenario, but now I have a child by her. Same thing. Your child says, your girl says, so-and-so looked at me while I was in the shower. You can't just leave with my kids because you can't pull rank because I have a baby by you. You can just up and go. So over the last 11 years, I've been pouring into these kids and feeding them and doing all this other stuff, right? But then now you just up and leave because you feel like it. That's why I hate that. Oh, I feel like. That's why I can't stand that phrase. I feel like. No. You can just pull rank and just go. But you can't do that with the one who's a virgin because you can, the baby's yours. You can be able to mold her and position her to where she can help you and do all the other things. That's why most men would rather go for that than this, because this is a potential liability. Do you understand what I'm saying? Does that make sense? Okay.
I'm trying to figure out how to say it without it sounding like
no, just say it.
Disrespectful. No, it doesn't make sense.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I told you it's not going to make sense to you.
No, because. But
the other stuff are assets. The managing and that's great. That's an asset. But
okay, listen. The way that I look at it is that At the end of the day, children are a blessing. Okay.
Yeah.
Wait. And unfortunately, we women, because we have mothering spirits,
Right.
we always look for the good in a person, even if there isn't any. And so we are willing to invest in places or pour seed into shallow ground. But at the end of the day, even if we have a little bit of a plant, we're still nurturing it. So if we come across men that give that persona that they have everything together and their intentions are good, and then they end up leaving us with the children to do things by ourselves, we shouldn't be punished because of the fact that we decided to, in spite of them being there, raise our kids to the best of our ability.
You shouldn't be punished.
No, wait. That being said, to say that, okay, well, the high value is diminished because she got 2 kids by these 2 people, and what if the kids end up saying X, Y, Z, is irrelevant.
No, I didn't say it's diminished. What I said was that a high value man, I'm not, and just even average men now, forget high value, just a man, period. The reason why in these modern times, the reason why there's less marriages happening now is because everything is in the woman's favor. Do you understand?
That's not what you were saying, but listen.
I know. I'm just telling you why,
everything's not in the woman's favor, but this is what I'm going to say. In regards to, let me pick up from the beginning.
Yeah.
In the beginning, you gave the narrative of, in the beginning, women were virgins when they're presented to their husbands, and he was high value and X, Y, Z. Now, you know that I went through the school of theology. Yes. And I have my doctorate degree.
Yes.
So let's push this back and let me explain something to you. Back in those days, it was more of a male dominant society.
Okay.
So women themselves, they were considered, I don't want to say cattle, but they were more of property.
Yes.
So many times when they were exchanged from their father's hand, a couple of weeks ago, we did a segment on fatherhood and manhood and whatnot.
Yes.
So at that point in time, when the women came into the property or the possession of another person through marriage,
yes,
it was more of a what's the word?
You're handing.
No, it was more like a transaction.
Yeah.
To a certain degree. That's why you have to pay the bride price. Even in Africa, if you don't pay
the dowry,
even in Africa, even now, if you don't pay the dowry, you're not considered married, period.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, when you're bringing your daughter and considering the fact that they were considered like property, you cannot bring used goods. You can't bring a cow that everybody has milked and say, okay, I want $5 million for this cow. They're going to be like, bruh, this cow has been used by everybody. So the only form of value that the woman had outside of whatever was taught to her by her mother or her father in that household was her virginity.
I understand that.
So at the end of the day, that was like the of primary importance. It didn't matter if the man was a king or a pauper with one goat. They wanted that intact because that was the only form of currency or value for the woman at that time.
That is correct.
She couldn't be a judge. She couldn't be, well, technically, I take that back. Anna was a judge, but she couldn't.
She couldn't hold a high position like she can't, like the modern women can now.
She wasn't in the synagogues teaching the people. That wasn't her place.
I get it. Yeah.
So that being said, that was of extreme importance. Nowadays, that's fine if you have your virginity, but you are using it along the guidelines of, okay, well, since she's, a virgin and I plan a baby on her, then, the likelihood of her leaving and me having to deal with stuff is not there. No, there's females who are pregnant and still leave the dude even if he's there first. It's kind of like if you don't have the mindset and the physical capability to take care of you, take care of the person, they're gone. It doesn't matter if you were the first one in or the last one out.
Yeah, I understand. I mean that the 80 to 90% of divorces are being led by women. Yes, of course. I understand that.
But then on the second trajectory, because I'm speaking from my understanding of it from coming into this relationship with a kid. It's kind of like my concept of love is that if I love you, I'm gonna love the person who came out of you. They might be hard to deal with for whatever reason. I might not like the baby mama, baby father, and the certain tendencies that they take from that genetic code. Okay. But for me to say, okay, well, the kid might say XYZ, so they're a liability, and that's why your value's diminished or whatever. You can't help what your children turn out to be. You can only point them in the right direction. The Bible
train
says,
them up. Yeah.
Right. The Bible says, train a child in the way that they should go, and when they're old, they won't depart from it. The way that you've trained them. They might act stupid initially, but they'll get the act right after a while. But as a woman, if I had met you, honest truth, if I had met you back then and you told me, oh, well, I don't want to be with you because you got a son, because you got somebody else, I would honestly be like, well, you're not worthy of me. Because people become the better version of themselves based on what they go through. The situations might not be ideal. It might be shameful. It might be great, and it's just a situation that happened to diminish or expire for some reason, but to be judged off of the fact that I have a kid and you don't want to take care of that kid, or you think that kid might be a liability. Do you know how many people who had situations, even professional athletes, whose daddy left because they thought that the kid wasn't anything and the mother wasn't anything, and those kids became millionaires and billionaires. Yeah. And the stepfathers who stepped up to be a man and raise that child, because manhood isn't about what comes out of your loins.
It's about you being there. Yes.
It's about you being there and being able to train the next generation of whatever it is that God has placed in your lap to the best of your ability.
Absolutely.
Whether it's your seed, whether it's another man's seed, whatever. What if Shaq's stepfather or whoever else plays basketball or football, and all these stories about how their daddy left and some guy stepped in to be their stepdad? What if they had that same kind of narrative? I'm not gonna train you to be a billionaire because you didn't come out of my loins. So your mom needs to put you in foster care so we can do this together without you.
Okay, so we're getting toward the end of we actually a little bit over time right now. So, but I'll say this: I get what you're saying, and you're 100% correct. I'm speaking general. I'm like me and you, or anybody who's in that situation. We're outliers, meaning that I don't see it that way. But I'm talking about the general public, the way men. This is why. Most men, what I just told you is what most men
are thinking.
Yes, that's their mindset. Like they're afraid to convey it to the woman because they don't want to mess something up, or you know what I mean?
It's already messed up if that's a mentality that they're coming to the relationship with, because at the end of the day, if they get married, that means that they already have in their heads to treat that child different. And mothers pick up on that. If you treating my child different because you feel that he was conceived by another person, our relationship is not going to last.
Understood.
Because at the end of the day, our children are our children. The two shall become one. Our children are our children. So it's kind of like if your mentality is like, oh, well, I don't want to see Albert in the house.
Yeah, but you have that mentality. You have that our children are our children. Majority of women don't have that. You know what their attitude is? This is my child. They will say that proudly. They can like, oh, this is my child.
No, they only say this is my child if the behavioral system that you're exhibiting towards the child is of a negative intent. If you're finding fault with everything that their kid does, you're picking on the kid. Oh, why does he do that? Why is he here? I can't stand this. You should let me have control of him. I need to be able to father him the way. And you want to put hands on the child because you're inwardly upset because of the fact that she had a kid by somebody else, and you really don't want the kid there, and you're using that as a reason to inflict harm and abuse on the child, then no, you can't be in charge. Yes, it is my child, because as it stands now, your behavioral system is not showing that what your intents for this child is good. And me as a mother and being intuitive, why would I allow my kid to suffer that just because I want to say I have a husband or somebody on my arm?
Understood. Agree to disagree. So
I'm just saying, honestly speaking.
Understood. Agree to disagree. So what's our next episode topic going to be about?
It's part 3 of this. And so we're talking about, funny that we got into it. We're talking about children and how in relationships and dating that you also have to consider what's good for you, your kid, and your family as a whole before you start deciding to commingle with anybody. So it's quite lengthy, and also witchcraft of words. It goes hand in hand, how the things we speak over each other as well as the children and our relationship comes into fruition based on where our minds are at.
Well, guys, great topic for today. You saw the different mindsets of men and women, and how sometimes we can see things in a separate way, but at the end of the day, with all that being said, as long as it's God led and God is in the middle, and he's the vine. He's the branch. You're the branch and he's the vine. You'll be good. So, with all that being said, Rise Up Love Ministries. We out.
Until next time.
Peace.